is safe at home during this Corona time. So I will start my presentation.
Yeah.
Conference is being recorded.
Yeah, can everyone see my screen?
Yes,
Yeah.
sir. Yes, sir.
Make it full screen.
Yes.
Yeah, it's full screen. You are not able to see?
Yeah. Yes,
Yeah,
sir.
yeah,
Yes,
yeah,
sir.
it's okay.
Please go ahead.
It's okay.
Please go ahead.
Okay. So welcome again. So today's topic has already been announced that does the cube strength really represents the in situ concrete strength? Or indirectly, the topic is going to deal with the understanding of concrete cube strength. When we are discussing about this topic, I know that everyone will feel that what is there is so big, or rocket technology in cube casting and testing. It's so easy. Everyone knows how to cast it. Say maybe 3 layers, 35 strokes.
Conference is being
But
recorded.
I know that many a times, because as we are practicing in this field for more than now 33 years. So whenever I go to the site as a structural engineer, or as a project management consultant, or as a quality control engineer, or even as a NDT consultant, many times I have noticed during my this entire 33 years of tenure that there are lot of mistakes people are doing in this entire process of this cube casting. Right from, in fact, the mistakes are being done right from selections of material of concrete, then maybe proper mix
Conference
design is
is
not
being
properly
recorded.
carried out. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, because I'm getting some announcements.
Dinesh, that is recording announcement is getting in.
I would request everyone, we are recording this session and will share with everyone. So please stop recording by yourself. We'll share with you, with everyone. So please go ahead.
Okay. So just I was talking that as we have noticed that in the field, people are very casual about this entire process, right from material selection of concrete, mix design of concrete, then during the construction practices also actual casting of concrete, then casting of cubes, testing of cubes, and right up to interpretation of the cube results. So I am going to deal, or I'm going to touch on this aspect, that the practices what we are following really at site, are they really correct, or are we going somewhere wrong? Then what are the actual coded or standard practices that we have to follow, and how to actually correlate or interpret the actual site concrete strength with your whatever we are going to test, either maybe with cube test, or for that matter even non-destructive test. So many times I see that at site people have a mistake, they do mistake. The tamping has to be for 35 times, and that is not 25. Most of the sites I see that people follow 25 strokes. So it has to be in 3 layers, 35 strokes with a 16 mm dia rod, which is rounded at the tip. So after casting, then maybe with a trowel you have to finish the cube. So as I say that apparently this looks to be a very simple process of casting the cube, but where it goes wrong. As I said that making concrete and designing for assumed grade of concrete, it may sound to be very easy or very much comfortable, but understanding a concrete is very complex. And in my last webinar, which was delivered about 2 weeks back, there also I had mentioned that was on interpretation of non-destructive testing. In that webinar also I had mentioned that understanding a concrete, it's very complex. The concrete seems to be a very easy to cast, but it's terribly a heterogeneous material and very complex to understand. And
Conference is
the
being
main
recorded.
question as for what this we lecture have, the $1,000,000 question is, does the cube strength truly represents the in situ concrete strength? Whenever we ask this question at site, people always they give answer that we know, yes, it is not truly representing a site concrete, but still whatever we are doing, we have to follow some codal provisions, and that's why this is the only test what we have to follow at site. So now just we'll start looking at how really these cube parameters, they are dependent on which factors and how they vary. When we say
Conference
that
is
we
being
are
recorded.
casting a cube and we are testing the cube at say 28 days strain. So when the cube is tested as per this standard procedure, so whatever strength we get from this result, that strength is not actually a in situ strength, but actually it represents the potential strength of the concrete, which is as delivered to the site. On this point, the potential strength and these aspects are very well clearly explained in ACI 2281, revision 19.
Conference is being
Normally-
recorded.
Normally, this cube testing is used as a basis of only quality control tool. So here, truly speaking, we are not expecting that if we get a 28-day strength on of this cube strength, so we are not expecting that this is going to be actually the strength of concrete at site. It is not intended to perform this test to actually calculate the strength of in situ, because this particular test does not make any allowance for effects such as placing, compaction, or curing. And that's why it is not true that whatever the strength what we have in cube, you are going to have a same strength at the site or in place. Sometimes there is a tendency or there are some practices followed, and unfortunately Indian code doesn't support that system.
Conference is being recorded.
ASTM C31, it does support this system. Sorry. So there are options available that normally the cubes are placed in curing ponds, either in lab or at site. But there is an option given in ASTM C31, which specifies that maybe you can cast the cubes with same concrete and place that cube mold there itself on the slab itself and cure that particular cube with same practice what you are going to follow for that particular slab. But remember, normally when we place these cubes over slab, this condition is going to simulate maybe a only curing condition of your slab. Because for beams, the curing is totally different. You're going to have maybe some sprinkling or ponding for slab. But for beam, unfortunately, in today's day, nobody is doing any kind of curing for beams. There used to be a person called as Disti, who used to do only one activity of curing throughout the day. But now that person, Disti, has been totally vanished from all the sites. To be frank, I would personally say that we are madly running after the speed and time. And with this rat race with speed and time, we are losing the total quality control on our all sites. And everyone knows that we are
Conference
making
is
some
being
compromise
recorded.
with this quality. But there is a tremendous pressure from especially the client side or from the owner side to complete the projects well within time-bound limits. In fact, you ask me, 90% of the projects where the time limits which are specified in contracts and tenders, they are totally unrealistic. Just simply they want to complete some project on some stipulated period. They define that time schedule, and that time limit is totally unreliable. You cannot practice, you cannot follow. And then what happens because of that, we start hampering the quality of concrete at site. And the first which is going to get hampered is the curing. There is a lot to talk on curing, but as we are discussing particular this issue, that when we cast such cubes which are placed, the cube molds which are placed over the slab, maybe probably they will have some similar conditions to that of slab concrete. But for beam, which is supposed to be cured from bottom. Almost 99% of the site, people don't cure the beams from bottom.
Conference is
And we
being
know how the
recorded.
columns are cured. When you cure the column, whatever Hessen cloths we use, they should be very thick. Actually, they should be of sugarcane jute. But normally what we see at site, they have a very broad mesh. Practically it doesn't hold a water at all. So the curing conditions even at site,
Conference
the
is
slab,
being
beam,
recorded.
column, they're totally different. Probably slab may have some kind of curing, maybe because of some sprinkling, occasional sprinkling, or say maybe for few days, 1 or 2 days, we may have some ponding. And that also we know that most of the time, as we are having slab cycle of around say 10 to 15 days, practically at almost all the sites we see that column concreting
Conference is
started
being recorded.
immediately on the next day. Immediately on the next day. Then if you're going to start the column concreting on next day, then how you can expect that your bunds, they are going to remain intact during this column shutting erection? It's impossible. And most of the time within practically you start making bunds from another side, the massa, that carpenter, he will start breaking those bunds because he wants to make a shuttering for column. So even for column, even for slab nowadays, the curing is almost not done, almost not done. And I think this makes a very important aspect that your site concrete is definitely not going to match with your cube. And in such case, where you are going to place such cube over the slab, even that case also, it is not going to truly represent.
Conference is being recorded.
Following such practice, what you are simulating is only a curing condition, maybe somewhat nearer, but still many of other factors which are bleeding, consolidation, compaction, they are not exactly same what you have in cube and concrete. So that's why even if you cast the concrete cubes with this method, that curing done exactly as per site, the cube molds are placed over site for 28 days or whatever the period you do a curing at site. So this is still not going to simulate the cube strength of site. So now if we start talking about the factors which affect the strength, so most of the time where it goes wrong, first it is a sampling error, that you have not correctly sampled the concrete, then failure to remix the sample, then distorted cube molds, lack of mold oils. Many times as we have our testing laboratory, frequently we get the cube molds or casted cubes from our clients. And we have seen that the dimension of these cube molds or cubes, they vary right from 145 mm to 150 mm. And this is very, very common. I have seen very odd shaped cube molds. People are using timber planks, they're using some shuttering material for making cube molds, and very crudely they cast these cubes. Then incomplete compaction. As I said that it has to have in 3 layers and 35 strokes. So if you have something wrong, then your cube result is not going to reflect correctly. Incorrect curing temperature. I am going to talk many of these aspects in detail. Then discontinuities in moist cure. Actually, the core practice is that once you cast the cubes, they should be covered with gunny bags, and there has to be a humidity more than 90% for first 24 hours. And then immediately
Conference is being recorded.
to transfer these cubes in curing tank, which have a temperature control of 27 degree plus or minus 2 degrees. So this is what is expected. But in reality at site, there is a lot of discontinuity in this curing. Most of the time for first 4 hours, the cubes are not covered with wet resin cloth. Then the cubes are not immediately transferred to the labs. If there is a site curing tank, then maybe the cubes are transferred to the site curing tanks, or sometimes they are transferred to the testing laboratory. But in this process, there is a discontinuity in the curing. Then faulty cube location, then faulty testing machine. So there are a number of factors which affect the cube strength. If you see this particular chart, in this particular chart, you will see that there is a plus minus range, and some of the factors like discontinuity in moist curing or faulty testing machine or incomplete compaction, some kind of these factors, they will always have a negative factor. But if we compare only this chart, then we may have our impression that in such case, our concrete cubes are going to be on lower side, but at reality, the strength is going to be altogether higher. My friend, this is not the case. In fact, these are few factors which are affecting on negative side, but I am going to tell you some of the major factors which increase the strength substantially. So we will go one by one out of that. So normally, many of the times we see that people complain that there is a failure in particular site, and this is one project which was carried out abroad, and they have identified that what are the probable reasons why this particular concrete strength results they fell. So if you see over here, the major 2-3 components, if you see, the highest component is over here, where higher slump than specified. And this is a very vital point. On paper, we have the concrete mix designs, but at site, we are seeing that hardly people follow this concrete mix design. If you ask me,
Conference is being
concrete
recorded.
mix design, whenever it is taken from a lab, that mix design, it needs to be applied a correction every day. And every day you have to prepare a fresh recipe of your concrete mix design based on a standard mix design given by a laboratory. But I have seen that people don't make any corrections at site, especially for moisture and absorption and maybe
Conference is
thermal
being
movement.
recorded.
And invariably they follow the same concrete mix design what we have released from day one to the end of that entire project. They follow same mix design, irrespective of whether they are casting in morning or afternoon or evening or night, or whether they are casting in summer or winter or monsoon. Same mix design is blindly followed at site. And the outcome of that is most of the time people do that mix design, follow that mix design only for doing some paperwork. And many times the companies, construction companies, especially those who are with ISO standard, they have to generate some documents. And for generating documentation purpose, only this mix design is followed. And when we start the concreting at site, this is my observation all over India, because I'm traveling for my testing purpose and for giving lectures all over India. And everywhere I have seen, almost you can say 90 to 95% cases at site, a separate batch is made in the morning when concrete starts. And that batch is called as a cube batch. So that only first batch is followed strictly as per mix design, where you have very strict water cement ratio, very stiff mix. And when you cast the cube, additional care is taken. Over and above that, some additional cement, dry cement is poured in that cube. And it is seen that cube definitely not fails. So I think everywhere we are cheating ourselves. Why we are casting a separate batch for cube casting? And once this process is complete, when the cubes are casted, then immediately aapka jo upar ka mukadam hai, then he will start giving action. Okay, now cubes are casted. Now start sambar concrete. So they will start adding huge amount of water, and all this concrete that will be always with the sambar concrete. And we never cast the cube of this real sambar concrete. We have very false concrete or a fake concrete which is not truly poured at site. Of those concrete we make the cubes. And that's why the reason we have is higher slump than specified. Then the major reason over here, second reason, is cube molds are not proper, cubes are not casted correctly. So like that, there are other factors also which affect, that is low strength, then poor cement storage, batching errors, then additions of site at water at site, then some batching errors, then malfunctioning of your equipment. So a lot of these factors, they contribute to ultimately why your cube concrete fails. Actually, where we should have the sampling. If you ask me where we should fill the cube should be filled at the end discharge point. That is where you are actually placing or pouring the concrete.
Conference is being
So
recorded.
if the site mix concrete, your weighbatcher or mixer may be at ground level, but if you are pouring that concrete at the 7th floor, then you are not supposed to cast the cube at the mixer level, but you should cast these cubes at the end discharge point where the really that concrete is coming out from pipe or where it is getting discharged from that chute. Even if it is a RMC supply, I see that there are wrong practices followed for RMC supply. Unfortunately, the RMC code, it specifies that whenever the RMC concrete is supplied, the cube samples should be taken from the concrete, from the chute of that transit mixer. If you ask me, this practice is wrong, because after the transit mixer, when the concrete is going to get say transported in your concrete pump, from that point onwards, there are possibilities that people add water to that concrete. If RMC supply includes the pumping, then the cubes has to be filled at the end discharge point. That is from where the concrete is coming at the placing position. So at that location, we are supposed to fill the cube. But I have seen that most of the RMC supplier or site engineers, they fill the cubes at the transit mixer. And we know that at many sites, water is added during pumping. And that water, what you are adding, that is not getting reflected in your cube strength. So if RMC supply includes your pumping, then it has to be at end discharge point. In case RMC supply doesn't include any pumping or placing, so if a supplier he is going to deliver you concrete only at your site, and then you are going to pick up that concrete and you are going to place, then RMC supplier responsibility will freeze at where he is giving you the concrete. So it may freeze at the chute of that transit mixer. But so for RMC supplier, for his interest, he may cast additional cubes at the transit mixer level. But if you are interested to know the actual strength of concrete, what is getting really placed at site, then I would strongly recommend that for final acceptance criteria, you should cast the cubes at end discharge point only and not at the chute. For RMC supplier, if the placing is not in scope, he may cast additional cubes for his satisfaction, or maybe
Conference
for his
is being recorded.
contractual requirements, because his contractual requirements will get frozen once he has supplied the concrete at transit mixer. But as I'm saying, if pumping is included in the scope of RMC, then it has to be at end discharge point. But I see that 99% of the site, people don't cast the cubes or fill the cubes at the end discharge point. So as per final acceptance criteria, if you're talking, the sample should be taken only and only at the end discharge point. These are the IS 456 requirements, that how many samples we should have.
Conference
I'm
is
not
being
going in
recorded.
detail. Normally, when we say one sample, it means that we have 3 test specimens. And when I'm saying 3 test specimens, I would strongly recommend again that if you're going to have, say, if your concreting is a very small concrete, maybe only of about, say, 5 cubic meter, where you are going to have only 3 test specimens, that is 3 cube samples. Then normally what practice is followed at site is the cubes are filled only at the start of your day concreting, that is in the morning. And for rest of the day, no one fills the cubes. Again, this is a wrong practice. Even if you are going to cast the 3 cubes, I would recommend that if your concreting is going to last long up to say 4 o'clock, then take your first cube in morning, say at 11 o'clock, then take second cube at 1 p.m. and then take the third cube probably at 3:30 or 4. IS code specifies only 28 days testing. 7 days testing is optional. In IS 456, right from 2000 version, it has been very specifically mentioned in the code that 7 days testing cannot become an acceptance criteria for concrete. On 7 days strength, you cannot accept or reject the concrete. This is optional. Again, you go to any sites anywhere in India and ask everyone that what is the acceptance criteria for 7 days tube strength. 100% answer given is 2/3 of 28 days. That is 66% of 28 days strength. Friends, this is a totally wrong acceptance criteria. This acceptance criteria was mentioned in IS 45678 version. 2000 version, this particular acceptance criteria for 7 days has been totally removed. And in fact, nowadays 7 days is not at all a strength to be taken as this taken for acceptance. Why that 66% clause has been removed? Because that 66% strength was derived for M15 strength of concrete, and that too for 33 grade of cement. And we are not using nowadays M15, and neither we are using 33 grade of cement. Now we are going with very high strength materials, and we are using different type of mineral admixtures like fly ash, GGBS, risers, silica fumes, and so many. And in addition to that, we have a lot of now construction chemicals. These construction chemicals and these mineral admixtures, they change the total scenario of your concrete strength and development. And that's why the earlier strength criteria, what was mentioned as 66%, now that is no more valid. What we have been testing in a laboratory and what we are being statistically collecting data in a laboratory, this 7 to 28 days strength ratio, it varies as low as from around 0.4 to as high as around say 0.95. Many a times we have seen that the concrete, suppose it is a M20 concrete and it has developed a strength of say 15. And then we may say that it is more than 2/3 and we may accept. But if that is OPC concrete cement of 53 grade cement, then our observation is there is hardly any increase after 7 days. Hardly, maybe 5 to 15%, not more than that. And so if you are taking a say factor as 0.66, that is going to give you a total wrong interpretation. Reverse case, suppose if you have M20 concrete and if your strength of 7 days is say 11, which is less than say 66%, 2/3. And then if you take a call that the concrete is not sufficiently strong, we have to discard it. And if that concrete has been casted with a cement which is having say 50% of GGBS and maybe some retarders, then there is a good amount of possibility that even 11 also may cross 20. So that's why 2/3 criteria is totally wrong. And if you ask me, there is no specific criteria for 7 days acceptance criteria. If at all you want to decide, then you have to establish a correlation of your 7 days and 28 days for that particular mix, for that particular grade, for that particular cement, for that particular aggregate, and for that particular site. And the moment you change any of them, you change aggregate, you change cement, you change grade, this correlation of 7 to 28 days is not going to remain valid. And that's why I think that there is no point much to depend on 7 days strength. maybe you can take this as a additional optional test to take a call for removal of, to decide a time for removal of formwork. But even for that also, you need to know that what is the strength of concrete. And for that also, you need to consider your structural engineer that what strength he wants at that time. So this you can take as a only optional, but this is 7 days cube sampling is not mandatory. Now we see that presently we are using different kind of mineral admixtures and many chemical admixtures. I'm giving two comparisons over here of two different batches of two different sites. Now on left hand side you will see that with same mix design, simply P3 OPC, and in another case it's PPC, maybe with fly ash. If you compare over here, the 7 days strength with 53 OPC is 80, PPC maybe 78. So here we may say that 66% is more sufficient. There could be some cases that over here that OPC is having only 76 and fly ash blended cement is having 67. And as I was saying, that we have number of such cases where we have the 7 day strength as low as even 40 to 45%. So the correlation of 7 day strength and 28 day strength, it mainly depends on a lot of parameters from brand to brand of cement company. It varies type of your basic raw material, that is limestone. The limestone, what properties you have in say Himachal, and limestone what you have in Karnataka, they will have a different parameter. The chemical composition of your cement, additions of chemical mineral admixtures, and fineness of cement. So a lot of parameters they dictate the So that's the reason this 7 days and year correction factor that has been removed from the code. Now there is a lot of effect on the size of your specimen, whether it is a cube or whether it's a cylinder. In India, we follow a practice of a cube, and we follow the practice of casting 150 by 150 by 150 cube. But the Indian code, this 150 by 150 by 150 cube size is meant for the aggregates which are say more than 20 mm up to 40 mm. And if you have the aggregate less than 20 mm, then even 100 mm cube casting and testing is allowed. But if you look in the definition of IS 456 characteristics strength definition, there it has been very specifically mentioned that we are supposed to use 150 by 150 by 150 cube only. So now if you see on left hand side, if you compare with the cube, so for 150, if you have a 100% strength, so instead of 150, now if you have say 250 size of cube, then there is going to be reduction of around 7%. And if you cast say around say 300 or 400 or 500 size of cube, then there is going to be still further reduction in your cube strength. Vice versa, if the size is say less, maybe if the size is 100 mm, then you will have more strength. Maybe around 3 to 5% you will get more strength. Same is the case with the cylinders also. So in cylinder also you will see that normally the cylinder diameter is 150. So for 150 you have 100. So if you go on increasing, it will drastically drop down the strength. So now what is the correlation of your cube dimension with your site members? Do we have any site member having a dimension of 150 width? Not a single. Maybe slab we have a 150 mm dimension thickness, but what about the plant dimensions? They are in meters, maybe 3, 4, 5 meters. So it's a plate element. And cube, what we are having is having all the 3 dimensions same. If you consider a beam, the minimum size will be around say 200 width. Again, the depth may be 450, 600, 1 meter, anything. Length can be anything 3 meters to 6 meters, 10 meters. So that's a line element. Column, same as beam, it is a line element. So truly speaking, if you ask me that is there any some cuboidal shape which is representing the site concrete? So maybe a foundation which is having a somewhat cubical shape, maybe say 1.5 meter by 1.5 meter by say 700 or 800 mm thick. So it is not a cube, but maybe somewhat cuboidal shape. But apart from that, your slab, beam and column, they don't have this shape similarity. The shape is totally different and the sizes of these members are totally different. And that's why if you see that as the size of your mold, it goes on increasing, the strength of concrete is going to come down. And that is mainly because of when you have a larger size, there is a good amount of possibility that there will be some honeycombing, some voids or some crack, or it is not getting properly compacted. And that's why it will lead to giving on strength on lower side. But what is the reality at site? At site, that is the reality. So at site, if this graph stands holds, then the strength at site is definitely going to be on lower side. This is one example where that correlation has been given over here. So if we take that 150 by 150 by 150 cube, if this we take as 100%, then 100 by 100 will be somewhere 97%, 300 by 300 will be 12%. If you go, as I said, even up to 500, then still the correction factor will be much more higher. Same is the case with the cylinders. Now, the complexity of this cube testing. When we compare the two shapes, in India, as I said, that we are following the practice of testing of cube samples. In US, they cast cylinders. In UK, they are following cube. In fact, we are copying UK. In some of the European countries, they even cast the prisms. Like Norway, they cast the prisms. So there are three types of different normally mold materials which are used for testing the tubes. And one is, the two are very common. One is cube and second is cylinder. Now, if we see that what is the actual action and what are the forces actually which are getting developed in this, hello? Hello?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Hello?
Hello.
Yes.
Yes,
Yeah,
sir.
I'm getting some message that someone is trying to remote control the screen.
I'll take care of it, sir.
So is this anybody from Ultratech side or?
No, not from Ultratech side. Somebody
Oh,
from out.
Yeah.
Okay,
We will
sorry.
take care, sir. We will take care.
Okay. I declined that screen. Okay, now if you compare these, what are the stresses which are getting truly developed in cube and cylinder? There is a main effect of restraining effect of the platons. That is when we place this cube mold under the compression testing machine. So we have top plate and bottom plate, and we will tighten those top plate and bottom plate over the sample, that is cube sample or maybe cylinder. And when we start applying a load, there is a restraining effect of this platons. And if it is a cube, the restraining effect, that is because of the friction which is developed between that concrete cube surface and the platen, that friction, it tries to give the lateral stresses. And if we see the cube, almost entire height of cube is getting affected because of this restraining effect of platons. And that's why, truly speaking, if you see that whether in cube, when we are testing under compression machine, is it really getting totally a pure axial compression like this? Then the answer is no. In cube, there is not only a pure compression, but there is a lateral stress which is being developed because of this restraining effect of platens. But if you compare with the cylinder, which is having 150 by 300 dia height, so over here, the central portion of around say 0.26, the size of diameter, over here, truly speaking, we have the perfect compression or pure compression. And this is not affected by lateral stresses. But this portion at the end, that is also getting affected by the lateral stresses because of that restraining effect. So now if we try to compare that, if we see this action, and then if we decide that which shape is a better shape or which shape is truly going to reflect the correct compressive strength, then it is cylinder and not the cube. And because of this restraining effect, the cube strength is going to be on higher side because there is a lateral stiffness which is acting on the inner side, and it is giving a lateral stress towards inside. It's pressing that cube. And that's why if you compare the cube strength with your cylinder, then most of the international code and even our Indian IS code, it gives a conversion factor of 1.25. That means your cube strength is always higher by 1.25 times the strength of cylinder. Now, a valid question. That means a same concrete, if you're placing in a cube, and same concrete, if it is getting placed in cylinder, then the strengths are different by almost 25%. Then which one is correct? So if we look this particular aspect of only the restraining effect, then definitely a cylinder is a much better option. But there are limitations with cylinders also, because for cylinder, you are required to cap the cylinder. And when you have any capping material in between, that will have its own, again, gray areas, and that will also affect your strength. And that's why we cannot say that all the time that cylinder is a better option or a cube is a better option. So as a policy decision, as we are following all British codes, so that's why we have adopted the cube and we are going ahead with the cube. But even if you cast the prisms, the prisms also are going to have different. They are going to behave similar to that of cylinder. And now again, if we try to compare this particular shape with your site members, where you have this cuboidal shape, practically no member at site is having this cuboidal shape. As I'm saying, that slab is a plate element, beam columns, they are line element, maybe to some extent footing is a cuboidal shape. So again, as your size affects the strength of your cube, same way your shape also affects the strength of your cube. Even the standard cylinder size, what we have is 1 diameter to 2 diameter is the height. So instead of that, because when we extract the core sample, there this problem comes, how to correlate the core strength with the cube strength. And normally we have some correction factors. IS 516, now it has been revised. IS 516 section part 4, now it's talking of core test. And over there, the code has given the correction factor. Some correction factors are for diameter, because the standard diameter has to be 150. At site, when you extract core sample, it's not in your hand that you'll be able to extract a 150, because the thickness of that member, spacing of your reinforcement, that everything will decide the diameter of your core sample. And so it may be somewhere 1D to 2D, the length of your core sample. So when you have this 1D to 2D, preferably it should be 2 times the diameter, for same reason that when you have 2 times, this is the in-between region where you have the pure compression. But if you have a core sample of say 1D or 1.25 times D, then this will come somewhat closer to this. And in such cases, the restraining effect also will be present when we test these core samples. So for that, the code gives you different correction factors. For different height to diameter ratio, it gives you correction factors. For different diameter, it gives you correction factors. Unfortunately, the code doesn't talk different correction factors for different grade of concrete. But what we are doing R&D at our laboratory for last almost 15 years, we are doing vast research on core testing. And there we have noticed that these factors, H by D ratio factors and diameter factors, they are not what they are given. They are not correct what they are given in 516. Actually, they even vary with the grade of concrete. So there is a need to establish these correction factors. In fact, we are doing, as I'm saying, a lot of research, and maybe probably in another 1 or 2 years, we may have these correction factors in place. Now, if you think of that mold material and texture of mold, will it have any effect? Normally, all the cube molds, what we cast, they are made of cast iron. IS code allows you to have a very stiff material, strong material, maybe even it allows you to have mild steel, but again, not for 150 mm, for maybe a lower diameter, the code allows you to have mild steel, but otherwise they are cast iron. Now, if you think that will it have effect, that mold material and texture of the mold? Yes, it has been seen that even the mold material or the texture of that mold, it matters and it affects the strength. Till date, what we are seeing that there is not much of research gone into this, because most probably we everywhere are following cube molds. But nowadays, if we consider the site material, that shuttering materials, so nowhere at site we use cast iron. At site shuttering, what we have is totally different. It may be mild steel plates, it may be timber planks, it may be shuttering plywood, it may be aluminum shuttering, and nowadays even PVC shuttering has also come in market. So you will see at site, the shuttering material is totally different, and for cube, what we have a shuttering material or the mold material is cast iron. IS code gives a basic general guideline that it should be a non-absorbent material, it should be non-reactive. Aluminum, magnesium are examples that they react with concrete. Then that particular material should hold their dimension and shape, and it has to be watertight. We are again doing some research on this for last around 3-4 years, and whatever the first outcome of our result, they are a bit shocking. Earlier we were thinking that it may have a very marginal effect, maybe because earlier all research paper, they say that it may have around say 1 to 3% effect, simply because of the change of mold material. But the present what R&D we had conducted, in our initial research, I would say that the percentage variation or the effect of this cube material we have found to be much higher. We are continuing with that research, and maybe once we have a very huge data with that, presently we are casting different cubes using different mold materials. We are using cube mold materials like plastic, aluminum, timber, shuttering plywood, mild steel, and cast iron. And we have been doing R&D on this. And maybe again next year, probably we may come out with the actual effect of this texture on the cube testing or the results of cube testing. But normally it is seen that if the texture of your cube mold, if it is very smooth, for that matter, even if you have a cast iron, say mold, which is a mirror polished, then your strength is going to be different. If it is a buff polish, then your strength is going to be different. And there is a effect of this particular texture of your mold, because straightway that affects the Platon effect, that is the friction between your concrete cube and the friction between your MS plate. Already we have discussed that IS code specifies that it has to be in 3 layers, 35 number of blows. If you have lower number of blows, then your strength is going to reduce. And it has been very well established in research that if you have even only 5% of voids due to incomplete compaction, the strain may drop down as high as 35%. And this underlines the importance of how important is your compaction at site. Again, there are n number of issues with the compaction at site. Especially for slab, we see that how we decide that whether the compaction is complete or not. Whenever we get a cement slurry on the top surface, we take that is the basis of that compaction is complete. And many times we see that there is a tendency for especially slab to over compact and to have a more slurry on the top. And by this, the concrete is going to get segregated. And we have seen when we carry out this number of non-destructive tests, we have seen that the junctions of columns and beams at these locations, many times we get lower velocities. They indicate that there are voids at the junction of column and beam because they are not properly compacted. And the main reason is congestion of reinforcement. So RCC consultant, they need to take care of the reinforcement detailing because that's very important. Many of the times I see that people complain on site that what we can do. The drawing is showing so much of reinforcement that there is no place, just forget to place the needle of 50 mm, that even we are not able to pass a finger from those heavily congested members. Then how we can compact? So definitely this aspect we need to take care. Curing temperature, a very important factor. The code specifies that the curing temperature has to be 27 degrees plus or minus 2 degrees. At how many sites or many of the labs, even for that matter, many engineering colleges I have seen, many site laboratories I have seen, and many other laboratories, in how many labs or sites they have the tanks wherein these cubes are placed. At how many locations they have a curing temperature system, control system. As per IS code, it has to be 27 degrees throughout the day and 365 days a year. 99% of the sites and most of the labs, they don't have this temperature control system. There has to be a temperature control system. And if you have a higher temperature of your water at site, then your concrete is going to have a higher strength. Vice versa, if your temperature of your curing water is lower, especially in winter, then your cube strength is going to drop down. And that's what exactly happens when we receive the cubes from our client. Most of the time, for first initial curing is done at site itself, and there is no control at all on the site to control the curing temperature of that water. And that's why there could be, say, 2-3 different possibilities. The ideal, as I'm saying, the casting and cure temperature at same temperature. So it has to be at 28 days. Now suppose the casting and curing temperature, if you have a elevated temperature, maybe during, say, summer, now we have temperatures crossing 40. Normally the temperature of water will be around, say, 2 to 3 degrees lower than the ambient temperature. So if you take a worst case of say 45-degree temperature, then your water temperature in a day, it could be around more than 40. At night, it may be somewhere around 30. And if you have cured these cubes consistently, continuously for 28 days on your site without having any temperature control, then your cube strength is going to be sufficiently high. And it can be high as even 10 to 15%, the strength can be high, which is a false strength. And reverse way, in winter, typically we see that people start making complaint that cube test results are not passing. Because especially a city like Pune or other cities wherein winter we have the temperature as low as 10 to 15 degree. So the water temperature is further going to be lower than that. So in such cases, if the cubes are cured in these site tanks, then you will get the lower strength. So there are some issues. There could be some different situation that is cast at different temperature, but cured at normal temperature. Suppose the concrete is casted at low temperature. Suppose you are casting in Himalaya or Kashmir, where your temperature at the time of casting is very low. And after that, you have shifted that cube in a curing tank where the temperature is 27 degree plus or minus 2. Even in such case also, as the initial at the time of casting itself, the temperature was lower, then you will get the lower strength. This is because of the lower temperature casting. And normally, if such cubes are casted and if you check them after say 6 months or 1 year, then you will notice that the strength achieved by these cubes is more than the high temperature casted cubes. This temperature I am talking at the time of casting. What is the temperature? So if you are casted in a lower temperature, then you will realize that these particular cubes, they will attain more strength at latter age. And this is mainly because of the microstructure of hydrated cement paste is uniform, relatively uniform in this particular lower temperature. If we take another case, that casting is done at normal temperature, but curing is done at different temperature. That is, for curing, suppose the temperature is much higher or curing the temperature is much lower. Of course, the lower the curing temperature, the lower would be the strength up to 28 days. We will see some of the graphs over here. This particular graph talks the temperature of your curing water. It is supposed to be somewhere around over here. So if you have a higher temperature of your water, then your concrete strength is definitely going to be on higher. If it is lower, then strength is going to be on lower side. Now over here, if you see that these specimens were cast, sealed and maintained at an indicated temperature and for 2 hours, that means they were cast at 10 degree or 21 degree or 46 degree for first 2 hours, and then they are stored at 21. So what I was saying, that if they are casted at low temperature, then at latter age, they will have the more strength. And over here, if you see that if specimens were casted at say 21 degree and maintained for first 6 hours and then stored at the temperature what we have over here, then naturally if your curing temperature is going to be lower, the strength is going to be definitely on lower side. So normally what are the curing period recommendations? For cube, we know that it has to be 28 days. But for site, we know that IS 456, it says that curing period shall be minimum 10 days for OPC and 15 days for blended cements. I'm repeating again, for concrete cube, for lab, it has to be a 28 days curing, but a site concrete, if it is made with OPC, then minimum you should have is 10. And if it is a blended cement, the blending can be either fly ash, GGBS, ricer, silica fume, or any other blending material, or which we called as a blended cement, or maybe PPC cement. So for that, IS code specifies it as 15 days. Now I will ask everyone that at how many sites really you cure the site concrete for 15 days. At present in India, almost 85% of your cement is blended cement. And even the rest of the sites also, people are doing blending at site. They are mixing fly ash and GGBS at site itself. So it's a blended cement concrete ultimately. So the minimum requirement as per IS code is 15 days, and only for OPC it's 10 days. You go to any site, ask anyone that what is the curing period specified by IS code. The standard answer is 7 days or 10 days. Almost no one knows that IS 456 specifies a clause of 15 days for blended cement. And as I'm saying that 85% of our sites in India, they are casted with blended cement. So they are supposed to be cured for minimum 15 days. If you ask me, my observation and experience with this cement, the blended cements, they should be cured for at least 21 days. I have seen that 15 days is also not sufficient as per our experience and our R&D, what we are doing in this field. So recommended is 21 days. How many sites we do curing? This is a big question. As I am repeatedly seeing, curing is a big issue with the speed what we are going ahead. Normally, the concreting will be completed, say, by, we finish the concreting at by say 6 o'clock or 7 o'clock in the evening. So then next day morning, if at all the bunds are going to be done, hardly any sites I see that people make bunds on slab. But if at all some bunds are to be made, the next day morning, that person will come on slab. Then he will start bringing sand and cement on the slab. Then he will start preparing the bund. By the end of that next day, he will complete his bunds. And till he is doing bund, you cannot store the water in concrete, that slab. So maybe he will sprinkle some water on that slab. That's only a sprinkling. And once that bunds are made, they are wet. So still you are not able to pour the concrete in that, pour the water in that bund. So they are allowed to set for that night. And maybe on third day, you really start your curing. And that is exactly the main difference what you have with your site concrete and your cube. Your cube is sitting idly in the pond, enjoying all curing temperature and all idealistic conditions. But at site, no one is bothered to see that whether the concrete is getting cured or not. And this is very unfortunate. And most of the site, I am very bluntly making this statement that 80 to 90% of the sites in India, the curing is very pathetic. It's almost you don't have curing over there. The reduction of 15% of strength is identified by the code. That means if you have cured a concrete for 28 days, and when a code is allowing you to cure the site concrete only for 10 days, we know that there is going to be a reduction in strength of the site concrete. And that reduction, if you cure for 10 days or 15 days, whether it's OPC or blended cement, then you are expected to get a 50% reduction in your actual in situ strength. And in fact, that is the reason when we extract the core samples and when we try to decide an acceptance criteria, the IS 456 specifies as 85% of your characteristic strength. That means if your strength is 20 M20, and if you get a equivalent converted cube strength of core as a 17, that is 15% lower, still that concrete is accepted as M20. Because we know that because of this lower curing period, the actual strength at site is going to be lower by around 15%. But this factor is being taken care into structural design where we have the partial safety factor for material. So where we have that 1.5, that is 0.5, out of that 0.5, that 0.15, that is 15%, is for lesser curing at site. So many times, as I'm saying, that people try to simulate the condition, they try to keep the cubes at the site, and then they take that as an acceptance criteria. I think that's wrong. Because in partial safety factor, already that care is being taken over. So again, we need not apply a separate correction factor. And then we should not have a separate correction over there. So final acceptance criteria, it has to be as per the fully cured cube and not as per ASTM C39. Many times people ask this question that suppose if we don't cure concrete at all, then what is going to happen? Then what is going to be the strength in that concrete which is not at all cured? So even if it is a air cured concrete, it depends again where you are curing. If it is going to be a coastal area where you have a lot of humidity, then still you will have a sufficient strength in your concrete, because concrete is going to have that humidity, moisture over there. And so evaporation loss is comparatively going to be lower. But if you take a dry site like say Pune, Nagpur, or Hyderabad or Bangalore, where the temperature or the entire region is totally dry, and even if you don't cure it at all, still it is found that you will have around say 50 to 60% of the strength of the concrete, even which is not cured. But of course, this is not at all recommended. So approximate, if you try to establish, these are not the exact figures. They will vary from again mix to mix, cement to cement, then site to site, depending upon the humidity and dryness. But in general, if a 28-day strength, if we assume to be 100%, and if suppose you place that concrete cube for almost 1 year in ponding, then you may get a strength as high as 150%. This is a typical question many times which is asked to us, because when we do carry out non-destructive test, especially the test of swimming pools or water tanks, where the concrete grade specified may be as say M20. And when we carry out the non-destructive test, maybe the one hammer ultrasonic and core combination, and at many places we have noticed that the design strength specified was M20, and we have tested or we have measured the strength more than 30 or even up to 40. Then people start doubting how this is possible, that when I have costed a concrete of M20, how it can have M30 strength. Yes, this is very much possible. If it is continuously moist, like a case of water tank or swimming pools, where there is going to be a continuous throughout the year, 24 hours, there is going to be a moist humidity around that concrete, then you can have a strength even 150 to 200% high. So this is very much possible. If you have no curing at all, then probably the strength will vary between 50 to 70. If it is dry area, then it will be around 50. If it is a humid area like say Mumbai, Chennai, or say Vizag, then it could be even up to 65 or 70% also. And when we do the curing, what is expected as per IS code for say 7 to 48 days, then you expect that around you will get a strength of around 85 to 90% of the strength. Moisture condition, how the cube is to be tested. IS code specifies that the cube has to be tested in saturated surface dry condition. That means just before testing of cube, you are supposed to take out that cube place it on a table, wipe all the surfaces with a cloth and make it dry. So it is saturated surface dry. The cube has to be tested in saturated surface dry. Again, my observation, in most of the cases, if the cubes are supposed to be tested at site in morning, then they will take out the cubes before, say, earlier day. Maybe one day before, they will remove all the cubes in the evening, and then they will place it outside, and then they will test these cubes in the morning. If suppose the testing is going to be carried out in the afternoon or evening, then they will take it out all these cubes from pond in the morning. This is a typical practice followed almost everywhere. And if you follow this type of practice, then the strength of such specimen will be around about 10 to 15% higher. And I know the persons, very smart contractors, those who know this clause very specifically, what they do, they will take out the specimen from the pond, they will keep it outside in open air for 3 days, and then they will test on 28 days. So they will take it out the cube on 25th day, keep it outside for 3 days, and then test it on 28 days. In such case, you will get the strength as high as even 15 to 20%. I know some of the cases where the cube was taken out from the pond 3 days before. For 1 day, the cubes are placed in oven at 100-degree temperature for 24 hours. Then they are removed from oven, and then they are allowed to come down to a room temperature in next 2 days, and then they are tested. I know such sites where these practices are followed. If you follow such practice, then you will get strength as high as 15 to 25%, you will get strength higher. The code very specifically mentions it has to be a saturated surface dry conditions. At how many site labs we follow these testing conditions very specifically. So mainly the lower strength of saturated concrete is mainly because of the disjoining pressure within that cement paste and lubricating effect which moisture has created. So that's why normally the concrete will always have a lower strength. If you compare this particular provision if you compare this particular provision with American codes, over there ASTM, that is American Standard for Testing Material, it says that the cubes should be, or cylinders should be tested in saturated surface dry condition. But ACI, that is American Concrete Institute, it's talking differently. American Concrete Institute, ACI, says that the condition of moisture of that cube should be as per the site condition. That means if the site concrete is going to be moist continuously, like a water tank, then you should test the cubes in moist condition, that is SSD. But if the concrete is going to be, throughout of its life, is going to be in dry condition, maybe inner columns or inner beams, then in such case, you may test the cubes in dry condition. But ASTM do not allow this. If you ask me, I would recommend that it should be tested in saturated surface dry, because that is the worst condition. What is going to, it may come anytime in its lifetime, and our concrete should stand for that worst condition. Because even inner members, if you're talking, there could be a possibility that because of your toilets are leaking, then your beam and slab, it's going to get moist. Then we cannot say that my member is not, throughout the lifespan, it's going to remain dry. So there could be many such situations that where you can have a possibility that your site concrete may be going to have a moist condition. So that's why it has to be tested in saturated surface dry condition. how the cube should fail. I have observation that as I started my presentation with this comment that cube casting and testing is taken very casual in our country. उसमें क्या ऐसी बड़ी बात है? Always cube casting and testing is left to a normal supervisor or even for that matter a labor. He will fill the cube, he will crush it. No one really goes when the testing is actually carried out, compression testing machine. I see hardly any times a civil engineer or a senior engineer or a quality engineer, he is standing in front of that compression testing machine and he is watching what is the failure pattern of that cube. No one sees how the cube fails. This is a photograph which shows that how in reality, if there is going to be a truly pure compression, then these are the shapes in, or these are the modes in which a cube should fail. Actually, every cube we need to check and monitor, and we should have a practice at site that we monitor this failure pattern and we should report this failure pattern. There has to be a practice. This is normally expected. And these are some of the failure patterns which are not expected. These are unsatisfactory failure patterns. In all of these failure patterns, you will see that some or other point, in addition to compression, a tension is getting developed. And that's why the concrete is not truly failing in the compression, but it's failing because of the some portion which is going under tension. And that's why the failure patterns or modes, they are very odd and they very clearly indicate that this is a tension. So every site person should have this background. And many times, because as we are working in the field of repair, rehabilitation and retrofitting, I always say that simply looking at some figures of cube test or ND test, we should not take any call of acceptance or rejectance. We have to do a very thorough investigation, very thorough detailed analysis we need to do. It involves even including the checking of failure pattern of your cube, that what has really happened, whether the cube has failed in compression or it has failed in tension. Even we have to see what kind of failure pattern, whether the aggregate has broken or whether there is an interface failure of aggregate and paste or a mortar has crushed. Even that is going to give you an indication. I know one of the project where the concrete was of M40 grade minimum, and they started the project, and for first few preliminary trials, they were not at all able to achieve a strength of M40. Somehow they were touching somewhere near about hardly 30, 35, but they were not able to cross the figure of 40. And then we were involved to check that as a NDT consultant, because the concrete was already placed in very large scale. The concrete was placed, and there was a debate whether to accept or reject that concrete. And then the discussion opened out that whether we should accept or reject. Then we asked them that, have you really checked that what is the failure pattern? Have you seen that whether there is an issue with a testing machine or whether there is an issue in the casting itself? Because here we are assuming that my dimensions of my cube are 150 by 150 by 150. I think this is the biggest assumption which is made invariably. If you see the test reports of all these concrete cube results, everywhere a cube dimension is written as 150 by 150 by 150. We are testing concrete now for more than almost around more than 20 years now. We are testing concrete. Till date in our lab, we have tested lakhs and lakhs of cubes. Few years back, we decided, because most of this cube we are getting from our sites and clients, there we don't have our control that cubes are not casted in laboratory, but they are casted in field. And they are being given to laboratory for testing. And when such cubes are received in our laboratory, we are supposed to measure the dimensions of these cubes with vernier caliper at all the locations, 6 locations, and take the average width, average length, and average height of that particular cube. Most of the cases, again I am repeating, more than 90% of the site labs, engineering colleges, or even other laboratories, they don't measure the dimension of cube. They simply write 150 by 150 by 150. So that's why a few years back we took a call and we applied a filter to whatever the cubes. We extracted around 75,000 samples from our data, and then we applied a filter that how many cubes they have the exact dimensions, because in our laboratory we measure them with vernier caliper, so we have the exact record. So when we applied a filter of 150 by 150 by 150 to around a sample size of around 75,000, we could get only 10 cubes. Out of 75,000 cubes, only 10 cubes were having the dimensions of 150 by 150 by 150. So that is what I am saying, that these are the controls at our site. Then we shifted that filter to plus minus 2 mm. That is from 148 mm to 152 mm. Then we found that almost around 50 to 55% of the cubes, they were within the range of 2 mm. But that means rest of 45% of cubes, they were having dimension variation more than 2 mm. And this is the ground reality. And we assume, we write, I have seen that many ISO certified companies, they have printed cube test result books wherein the dimension of cube is printed as 150 by 150 and area is printed as 150 by 150 square. It cannot be. It's impossible. If I am saying out of 75,000 cubes, only 10% can have the exact dimension, then the probability is not even 0.001%. What we are talking of writing 150. It cannot be. And if that is the ground reality, then in almost majority of the cases, the failure pattern, what you see in front of your screen, it is going to be of this kind. Because the plates are not parallel. Because of this difference in dimension, the plates are not parallel. And then you are not going to have a true compression. Then there is going to be some tension introduced in your testing process. So this is very much important that we need to assess. So coming back to the example what I was giving, that particular case, the cube strength was not passing. So then we asked that we will visit the site and we will check that how the concrete cubes are getting filled. And when the cubes were crushed in front of us, we identified that in all the cubes, the aggregate was getting crushed. Then we asked them that from which source and which aggregate you are using. The aggregate used was amygdaloidal basalt. It cannot have a strength more than say 30-35. Then we requested them to change the source of aggregate and ask them to go ahead with basalt, because if you want to have more than say 40, then amygdaloidal basalt, it's very difficult to get a strength in amygdaloidal basalt. And then they changed the source, and for same cement content, they started getting strength more than M50. So that's why I'm saying the importance of looking the crushing failure pattern. We need to identify whether the concrete has crushed in aggregate or whether it has crushed in mortar, or there is an interface failure. Because these observations, they are going to give you some vital information. Or then test procedure and compression testing machine. Compression testing machine plays a very, very vital role in this entire process. So there are n number of issues which are associated with a compression testing machine. Already we are coming to closer to our time, 5:30. So I'm not going much in detail because this will require some a detailed time. But your basic machine, it should be, there has to be some specific requirement that your basic machine should be very firm and sturdy. There should not be any deformation between your top and bottom plates. They should be sufficiently strong. The vertical frame, preferably it should be of a solid metal. Sometimes the older machines, they have few pillars, MS rod, stainless steel rods. Then it's very important that how they are sturdy. It becomes very important to know all this. Most important is that the top plate of your compression testing machine has to be a rocker and roller plate. Because as I'm saying that nowhere we can have a exact cube which is having a dimension of exact 150 by 150 by 150. It's going to be plus minus 2 mm to 5 mm plus minus. So in such case, your top plate has to be a rocker and roller plate. Now, just I will share one or two slides with related to this compression testing machine. I think this particular is talking of the strength and failure type of 100 mm cube, which is slightly placed eccentrically. There could be mistake that you are placing the cube eccentrically, or your frame itself is not concentric. The frame itself, there is some eccentricity. And even if you see that there is a displacement of say 20 mm, the reduction in strength can be 10 mm. And if it goes up to say 40 mm, then the reduction can be as high as even a 40% reduction. So placing cube in testing machine is equally important. Your machine also, it has to be a concentric machine. If your top plate and bottom plate, if they are not perfectly flat and smooth, if they are concave or convex, then that is also going to affect your strength. If it is a concave plate, if it is a low quality concrete, then your strength will be on higher side. The actual strength what you have measured is going to be on higher side than the actual realistic. But if it is a high strength concrete, then it will decrease. If it is convex, it can be low or high quality concrete. If it is a convex shape, then your strength is going to decrease. Sometimes people recommend to use packing material. They use some rubber packing material or plywood. I have seen that people use between cube and top plate or bottom plate. It is not at all recommended to use any kind of packing material. There has to be a direct contact of concrete with the platen of your compression testing machine. If you use packing plate, then the strength will be on lower side. Similarly, lubrication of test surface area, this is also not recommended. This also gives a strength on lower side. And this is exactly where we are finding our observation. When we are using PVC molds or aluminum molds, we are noticing that there is a reduction in strength. So probably these surfaces are too smooth, and the surface of concrete, it gives a slightly lubricating effect. Then it is very important that your CTM or UTM, which you're testing, it has to be regularly calibrated, preferably from a ISO 17025 accredited lab. I'm not specifically using a word NABL accredited lab, because NABL is an agency which is giving accreditation of ISO 17025. And unfortunately in India, people lose this word use the NABL accredited lab. If you ask me, it has to be a ISO 17025 accredited lab. NABL is one of the agency, and that is not the only agency, and that is not the only authorized agencies. There are other accredited, international accredited agencies which can give you ISO 17025. So it's not only NABL who is authorized. That's why I'm not using word from NABL accredited lab, but it has to be a ISO 17025 accredited lab. Then most important, the specimen shall be tested in the range of 10 to 90% of the capacity of CTM or UTM. Actually, this rule applies to any kind of instrument. Let it be any kind of instrument. Normally, all the instruments, they should be preferably used in the range of 10 to 90%, because below 10 and above 90% of its capacity, the reliability of result is not very accurate. Why I'm specifically giving this over here? Because when you test the concrete core samples, where the diameter, it can be a very small diameter, as a 75, 100 mm, or even for that matter, it may be 60 mm diameter. So if you are testing small core samples, there almost up to M80 grade of concrete, the load on that core sample is not going to be more than around, say, 50 tons. And now suppose, and it could be as low as, even it could be as low as, say, around 5 tons or 7 tons. It could be as low as that. And if you're using a 300-ton capacity machine, and on that you're applying a force of only 7 ton, I think there is going to be error. And this is very well practiced all over the world, that the machine should be tested only in 10 to 90%. So the laboratories which are testing core samples, they should have a smaller capacity CTM, maybe of around 30 to 50 tons capacity. Another important aspect is direction of loading and direction of casting. Normally, in case of cylinder, the cylinder is cast in this direction, and this is placed in same position in compression testing machine. So compression is also given in same direction. So in case of cylinder, the direction of casting of concrete and direction of loading of sample is same. But in case of cube, it is not the case. We cast it vertically, and as the top surface is rough, we rotate it in 90 degrees. So in case of cube, the casting direction and testing or loading direction is at 90 degrees. That also makes a difference. But if you compare this again condition at site, all your gravity load, which is going to be a permanent load, your earthquake or wind, it's not going to be a permanent, it's going to be a occasional load. So your main sulfate and dead load, live load, is going to act in the vertical downward direction, and all concrete is getting casted in vertically downward direction. So at site, the casting direction and loading direction is same, which is very similar to that of cylinder. So again, over this here, a cylinder is a better option, because here the casting direction and testing direction is same. But in case of cube, you're rotating the cube in 90 degrees, and that's why it will have a somewhat lower strength. Actually, on this particular issue, lot of experiment or research is going worldwide. And earlier, people used to say that if you cast, if you test the tube or say cylinder in same direction, then you will get 8%, 4 to 8% of higher strength. But with the recent research, people have noticed that these figures are not truly correct, and sometimes this factor is not correct, and that's why even European code and BS code, they have removed. Earlier there was a very specific mention to apply correction factor for this casting direction, but now British code and European code, they have removed this factor, and they have very specifically mentioned that the present research indicates that there is no much of difference in the actual strength. This is also, we should keep it in mind. And coming to my last point, the most important, the rate of loading. As per IS code, the rate of loading of testing of cube is 140 kg per centimeter square per minute. So suppose we assume a cube of 150 by 150 by 150. We are supposed to crush that cube with a speed of 315 kilonewton per minute. That means, for example, suppose if we consider a concrete grade of M30, so 30 into 225 area, so expected load is going to be somewhere more than around say 650 to 750 kilonewton. So you should require at least 2 to 2.5 minutes for crushing that M30 cube. Now this is a very important aspect, and again I will highlight on this, that wherever we have the testing laboratories at site, many contractors, they have testing laboratories at site. Many engineering colleges, they have laboratory. Many other private laboratories are in field. How many of these laboratories, they have the fully automated electronic rate of loading control equipment? Many of the site instruments, what we see at site testing instruments, compression testing machines, they are hand operated. And that's why when we decided that this is a major factor affecting, about 3 years back, we decided to conduct a research on that. And we split that entire research into two factors. One was to collect the information from site, that what people are using at site, what is the real rate of loading with which they are crushing the cubes. So that's why we collected the cubes almost from around 30 sites. And these are not only sites, but these labs, I would say. Out of these 30 labs, most of them were site labs, some of them from engineering colleges, and some of were other labs. And there we collected the data that with what speed really people are crushing the cube at these labs. And we were shocked that out of these 30 labs, not a single lab was near about this required rate of loading. The required rate of loading is 140 kg per centimeter square per minute. The least rate of loading what we noticed or what we gathered in these 30 laboratories, that figure was somewhere around 400, the lowest rate of loading speed. And a standard, you can say, rate of loading speed was somewhere between 600 to 1200 kg per centimeter square minute. And even there were labs, and it's not that every lab is having some specific condition. Normally, higher the grade of concrete, higher is the rate of loading. Because everyone knows, because the cube is not crushed by engineer, it is being crushed by some labor or mukaddam. So he has a time-bound program. He wants to finish that entire crushing activity within stipulated time. So let it be M50, 60 cube, he will crush that cube within 10 to 30 seconds. 10 to 30 seconds, I'm talking. And that's why one lab can have a rate of loading right from 400 to around 1500. So this was the data collected from site. Then we casted in our laboratory different cubes of different grades, and then we applied a rate of loading varying right from a theoretical value of 140 up to around 1400, 1500, we applied a rate of loading. And then the graph is in front of you. If you apply such a huge rate of loading, very fast speedy, then the actual concrete will get crushed as high as 30 to 45% higher. If you see the graph, have these conditions or machines with them, and there itself this is possible. So now I will wind it up. Maybe I will skip this slide because already we have crossed the time. Okay, the last some of my observations that whatever the entire cube testing procedure and what till this entire present, if you are seeing that, I really doubt that whether it has really any correlation with your in situ strength. In fact, forget about in situ strength. The entire cube testing process itself, it has got so much of standardizations and so much of specific conditions which are hardly followed in any of the testing laboratories at site or wherever in India. The entire process, in fact, right from cube casting, testing, interpretation is taken very casually. I request that everyone should be very well conversant with all this process. We need to train this, and we should take this in very serious aspect. And really, if you want to compare or find out the site strength, if you ask me that, can we find out the in situ intrinsic strength of concrete, then my straightway answer is no. No one in the world can find out the true intrinsic in situ strength of concrete. We are trying to come somewhere closer to that value, but we cannot find out. Maybe one of the options what we can opt, maybe you can use definitely non-destructive test to get a realistic idea about the in situ strength. And most important, why this is happening is mainly because of the speedy construction. I think there is a tremendous need that we should reduce this speed. We are madly running after speed at the cost of quality. So if we don't do this, then definitely the durability will remain only on paper. Only for ISO 9000, we will have so many documents marked as tick with durability found okay.
आवाज नहीं आ रहा है।
Hello.
आवाज नहीं आ रहा है। हेलो
अच्छा, डैडी का आवाज आ रहा है क्या?
हेलो मुझे मुझे नहीं आ रहा ना।
Hello, Ravi sir, are you audible?
हेलो हेलो दिनेश। हेलो
Yes,
हेलो
yes, sir. Yes, sir.
क्या हुआ? डिस्कनेक्ट हो गए? क्या हुआ? व्हाट इज द प्रॉब्लम?
I guess.
No, you are connected. Hemanji, I can listen to you. This is Prasad.
Yes, yes. Prasad sir, actually Ravi sir have got disconnected. So, hello.
Maybe Harsh, you can call him and get him
Yes, sir.
back
Yes, sir.
online.
Yes, sir. Yes, yes.
Yeah.
I'm calling. I'm calling. I'm calling.
Yeah.
हेलो dear participants, bear with us due to some issue at Ranade sir's connectivity. We'll get back very soon. Please bear with us. Hello. Hello.
Sir, hello. So
Ah,
I just had a word with Ravi sir. So he's getting connected in just a bit, in just a second. So till then, I would request, like as we were recording this session, and Sevekari sir can help me out on this.